Hi, my name is Brad Morris, North Dakota State University. I want to talk about an argument by Jeff Moriarty in favor of wage transparency. Wage secrecy refers to the practice of withholding information about the salaries of other employees in the company. It's still the default position for many companies. In his Against Pay Secrecy, Moriarty argues for full wage transparency among the employees in a company, and with some qualifications, full transparency for all employees providing similar service to their employers. I don't intend to criticize Moriarty's conclusion. I generally agree with it. Think of this as an attempt to strengthen his argument. Moriarty suggests 3 reasons in support of wage transparency. Wage transparency helps the economy to run more efficient, where efficiency refers to the efficient use of labor. And wage transparency will make it more difficult for some managers to engage in unjustified discrimination. But it's autonomy that I'm interested in. Autonomy of the self is a complex concept. If you start to unpack it, you'll find elements like rationality, self-governed, independent, impartial, all virtues of an autonomous person. I'm going to suggest that autonomy in this context has a dual role. Autonomy is a property of the agent. We think of autonomy as an important moral right of the agent. The correlated duty is minimally don't interfere with another's autonomy. But there is another sense in which autonomy moves in a different direction toward the agent. I'm thinking of the self-governed condition in autonomy. To say that a subject is self-governed is not to say that the self governs self, as if self-governing is a property which holds between 2 agents that happen to be identical. Nor am I saying that self-governing is a monadic property of the agent. I'm suggesting we think of self-governed as something that picks out a kind or type of thing. It moves from a property of an entity to an entity that possesses properties. In this sense, the agent is self-governed, uses the is of identity. Self-governing is a necessary condition for agency. Self-governed suggests a relation between ownership and own, but to take that as meaning I own myself is a little peculiar. The initiation of my acts, the originator, belongs to me. So to unite the two, make them identical, we'll use the term actor or agent. One way to understand the use of self-governed refers to the identity of the agent herself. Self-governed picks out the kind of entity that can be an agent. So there are at least 2 ways to use self-governed as an element of autonomy. To be one who acts or an agent means the same thing. And one who is self-governed can be read the same way. Moriarty says there are 3 benefits of pay transparency: justice, efficiency, and autonomy. Well, an employee's salary might be the result of a just distribution without any of the employees being autonomous. They wouldn't be aware of the justice, but it might be there all the same. It's the same thing with efficiency. Wherever the term efficiency applies, for example, an inefficient labor market, nothing turns on an employee's autonomy. But autonomy is different. On the one hand, it is a moral right that ought to be considered in our ethical reasoning, but it is also an indicator of the ethical reasoner. To destroy my autonomy in this way is to dissolve my role as an actor. A non-autonomous being without self-government, with no ownership or authority, has no agency. John Benson seems to have this understanding of self-governed when he says an agent is one who acts. In order to act, one must initiate one's action. And one cannot initiate one's action without exercising one's power to do so. Since nothing and no one has the power to act except the agent herself, she alone is entitled to exercise this power. This means that insofar as someone is an agent, insofar as she is one who acts, she is correct to regard her own commitments to acting, her own judgments and decisions about how she should act, as authoritative. Indeed, if she were to challenge the authority that is an essential feature of her judgments and decisions, then they would cease to be her own practical conclusions. Their power to move her would cease to be a manifestation of her power to move herself. It would not be the power of her own agency. Pay secrecy interferes with autonomous agency. It may not do so in the same way in other contexts, like medicine, but in business, autonomy plays a kind of quarterback role. To threaten the agent's autonomy is to deny him a place on the field. Moriarty's argument is stronger when autonomy is viewed this way. To the extent that an owner, manager, or employee's autonomy is undermined, the role of the actor is diminished. In addition to making it harder for an employer to unjustly discriminate against an employee or a lack of efficiency in a labor market, a loss of autonomy is a loss of agency. Pay secrecy threatens the structure of the employee-employer relation. The employees become non-autonomous cogs in a machine. That may seem extreme, but wage secrecy moves in that direction. Colella and others argue that pay secrecy has its place. It can depend on a variety of factors, and the authors think that that policy might make sense with some companies. Their work is descriptive. They leave it to the reader to evaluate the costs and benefits. Moriarty considers the issue from an ethical perspective, but ethics needs facts for evaluation, and Colella describes situations where ethical values may conflict. One source of conflict is with privacy. If they had a choice, would employees prefer wage secrecy? Well, some will, some will not. Moriarty cites the strong cultural prohibition against transparency as one reason. Some of us find the practice disturbing. Mind your own business might be one retort. Moriarty argues for full transparency, despite the conflicts. Colella suggests that one reason for the prohibition is the company or the culture's ethos. If a company prizes individualism and another prizes collectivism, should we expect different reactions to a policy of wage transparency? Both Colella and Moriarty realized we need more data. In the meantime, Moriarty should hedge his conclusion about full transparency and use the double edge of autonomy for additional support. Thanks for attending.